welcome to the first podcast of my channel. It's been a long time overdue, and I'm here today just to do a little comeback on my journey from the start to where I am now. When I started, well, back in the days, I think it was back in like 2011. We purchased this property in 2010, so it would be in 2011 I got my first chickens. I started trying to make a garden. It didn't work out at all. I didn't give up, but let's just say that even if I didn't give up, I didn't work hard after that. I had this little 4x6, 4x8 garden. I tried to grow carrots. It wouldn't work. I tried to grow radishes. It didn't work. I tried to grow beans. That's pretty much the only thing that I was able to grow. But I only had a few beans, like 5 plants maybe. So I only had about enough to have a few meals. And I didn't have any perennials on my property other than like a few wild strawberries. I I didn't know what I was doing. Just keep in mind, when I first started, like I was digging in the ground to try to plant flowers because I thought that this was the way to stop the weeds from growing. And that's in 2011. I've come a long way since then, and I had some times where I actually understood that you would need to put some soil on top. I was removing the weeds. I would put some soil on top, some mulch. I would plant the flowers or the plants. I even planted chives, not knowing what it was. So I had a bunch of flowers, columbines, lupines, chives, and a few other flowers that I had growing all around my property because I wanted to have something pretty. But I just could not make it work with the vegetables and the fruits. I purchased my first apple tree, I think it was in like 2014, and the first spring was a nightmare. There was teeth mark all around the bark, all the way up the tree for about like 2 feet high. So I'm pretty sure that it was um, a mouse. I have a lot of mice on my property. It was either that or a rat, something along those lines. I've also heard that it could have been like a raccoon, but I'm pretty sure it was in the rat category, rat, mice, something like that. And what happened after that is I figured I'm just going to cut the dead part and see what happens. I didn't know any better. So I cut the dead part and I figured I'll let it grow and see what happens after that. Meanwhile, I was still struggling with the garden. I was trying hard to make something decent, and I ended up buying some compost at a local nursery. And I remember when they delivered my stuff here, they delivered a few bags. I think it was like $20 a bag. And so I had like 6 or 7 of them in just like regular topsoil, to which they told me that it was full of different seeds and I was going to get a lot of weeds. And I figured, it's not going to bother much because what else am I going to do, right? I didn't really mind. That guy, the guy that delivered the stuff, knew what he was doing, what he was talking about a lot more than I did. And he told me that the apple tree survived, and all I had to do was focus on the one stem, on the one, like the main branch that was going up. I had 3 or 4. I went with two. I didn't know which one to keep between the two of them. So regardless, I decided to keep the two branches, two of the branches, and I wanted to see which one was going to grow best. And as of today, I mean, that was in 2000, it would have been spring 2015. We're 2024, and the apple tree is still healthy, growing. Well, it was healthy until 2022 and growing a ton of apple. 2022 and 2023 I don't know if it's a fungus, if it's just because of the weather we've had, or what's wrong with the apple tree, but the flowers are blooming. They are being pollinated because I can see the apples starting. Like you can see the tip of the flower actually growing up. And then it gets about the size of a toonie and they fall off, they die. And the apples that remain on the tree, they have like this brownish, mushy fungus on them. So it's either because of the weather or simply because my apple tree is sick. So I'm going to have to figure it out and try to fix it. But the tree itself is still very, very healthy. Maybe I need to trim it a little bit and help with the airflow around the tree. Maybe that would do the trick. But I don't know. I guess I'll have to read about it. If you have any idea what could be causing that, just leave me a comment down below. I kept trying to make a garden, to come back on that subject. Um, 2016, 2017, I actually gave up at some point for about 2 years. I didn't really know what I was doing. Every once in a while, I would just go and buy like a fruit, little bush like gooseberries. Then I bought a few blueberries. But then when everything that happened in 2020 happened, me working at a hospital, you can imagine that it was even more strict at the hospital than it was anywhere else. We couldn't go to the cafeteria for our breaks. We had to eat at our office if it's something we could do. And I was sharing an office with one of my colleagues. Of course, we had to be 6 feet apart. We were facing the walls on our sides, like each of us were facing different wall. So I had nothing better to do than research because I wanted to be good at gardening. And that's probably when it actually started for me. So my journey, the official journey, when I decided that I was going to go learn, fill my brain with videos, books, articles online, blogs, anything like that. That's really in 2020 that it actually happened. All the restrictions started happening around March. April, May is where I went all out. I ended up getting rabbits. I ended up getting meat chickens. I had layers, but I didn't have meat chickens yet. The first year, I had a garden of about, maybe like 9 feet by 15 feet. I was able to grow a little bit of vegetables. I was able to grow lettuce, potatoes, radishes, carrots, beans. I made a strawberry bed. The strawberries are doing great. I planted a few raspberries. Those are like invading that side of the property, and I am fine with it. I ended up also buying a bunch of different Camrys or honeyberries, if you prefer. There's so many things when you start that you have to think about. The first year, I did the basics. I started amending my garden. I planted a few perennials, but it's really like after the second year, I ended up having more rabbits. I ended up having more chickens. I actually purchased some pigs only to have the village come over and tell me that it was not legal for me to have chickens and pigs here. That put brakes on everything that I was doing. It stopped my whole operation, and I almost cried. I was so pissed. Why would you stop someone from growing their own food? I'm not a kind of guy to believe in all those conspiracies. I'm not a kind of guy to usually go dark on the things that are going on in the world. But somehow you have to believe that every single human being should have the right to feed themselves. It's not normal nowadays, especially nowadays. The cost of grocery is crazy. A lot of people now have to choose between food and bills. So not being allowed to grow my own pigs, my own chickens, it was really, really, really heartbreaking for me. I thought I was gonna quit everything. I wanted to sell my house. The house was actually for sale for a little while. We visited a few houses. There was one that would have been very, very nice, although the price they were asking for the house was crazy expensive. They were asking around $200,000 for a house that if it was completely finished and the property was flawless, it would have been worth that much. And even now it would have been that much. But it looked as though the walls were not finished, and it looked like someone played darts on the walls. There was a bunch of tiny little holes everywhere. The property was 9 acres. There was a nice trail in the back of the property heading straight to the highway. So it would have been a nice and easy way for me to get the highway in summer. It was also, it had this big, huge garage. The garage was probably bigger than the house itself. It would have been a nice place to make like this little tiny apartment or loft for the older kids. My oldest daughter is now 19. The other one, after that, is turning 16 in a few months. It would have been a nice way to give them their privacy while still having them home. You know what I mean? It was already full of cherry trees, apple trees. It had a bunch of perennials. There was a small, tiny chicken coop already on the property, but it was not worth $200,000. It was nice. Like they had little porch all around the house. It would have been nice for seed starting, but I would have needed to take one of those rooms to make an actual bedroom. The basement was not finished. The walls were not finished. I ended up not making an offer, and I'm glad I did not. The setting would have been perfect, but the house itself, there was too much work to do. We visited a second house not too far from here. That would have been better because the kids could have stayed to the same school. You already had a root cellar, and they had this little place in the basement that would have been perfect for storing food. The stairs were a little bit dangerous. That's something I would have had to fix. It was 2 acre property. That would have been nice. It was surrounded by farms, but the place itself was residential. So I would have had to buy the house, pay about another $800 for a request to have the zone change, and the neighbors could have decided they just didn't want me to have pigs or didn't want me to have chickens, and it would have been the end of it. I would have ended up being in a place further away from my family, further away from my friends, and not being allowed to have animals. So I figured I was going to find another way. A lot of friends and family members told me that I could bring my animals there if I needed it. It's been 3 years. I am nowhere near ready to have pigs, but I found a nice place that sells live pork for very cheap, for cheaper than what I can raise them. So that's a plus. It is 100% organic, and I trust the seller. So it's all good on that end. My buddy sells, whom I didn't know back then. I didn't know who he was, and I even remember asking a few friends, like, "Do you know Sells? Like, what kind of guy is he?" Turns out that he bought a land about, well, precisely 4 minutes away from my place, and he's allowing me to have my animals there. He's actually taking good care of them when I'm not there, and he's actually doing a lot of work for me. And even if I offer him to have meat, he doesn't want to take it. But when that happened, it was kind of a very, very nice plan B. So my garden here was expanding. I decided to keep going. My garden in 2022 was bigger. I was able to bring my barn on Sarah's property to have my turkeys and meat chickens there. I had a few chickens, barred rocks, and partridge chanticleer, and I even had quails. So all of this was only 4 minutes away. I expanded my garden here. Where the barn was, the grass, of course, was all dead underneath. So it gave me a nice place to plant some extra vegetables. I ended up planting asparagus, garlic, onions, sunflowers, and the sunflowers keeps coming back every year. I expanded the garden behind the house. I had the small little garden that I had previously started on the side of the property on like between the house and the raspberries. I ended up putting a small, I think it's 4 by 6 or 6 by 8. I would need to measure. It might be like 4 by 8, actually. A little tiny greenhouse, and the greenhouse has been there since. I don't need to disassemble it in the fall. That's the side of the house that doesn't have same amount of snow. I planted a few apple trees, cherry trees, gooseberries. Yes, it is an investment, but if I remember when I started in 2020, I wanted to be as self-sufficient as possible. So the next step for me was not only to start a garden, but to start a little fruit forest. My raspberries are now doing great. My gooseberries and my strawberries are also doing great. My apple trees are starting to finally produce a little bit. Plus, I have so many different kind of fruits around. You wouldn't believe. I ended up buying some honeyberries, like I said, Camrys. A friend of mine gave me some black currants. Of course, they don't taste good, but you can use them to make jam, jelly, fruit leather, things like that. I also ended up having red currant, white currants. I have some pear trees, some cherry trees, plum trees. It is an investment that I had to make over 4 years. It's something that you can do over maybe 5 to 10 years if you want, if you prefer. All you need is the one raspberry plant that survives, and it will propagate through the roots. You can also get some from friends, get some from family members. There was an old raspberry farm that closed not too far from here, literally like 2 minutes away. They allow me to go and pick up whatever I could. Now they all died. That's on me, but you plant 20 of them, chances are one of them is going to survive, right? My cherries, I'm struggling a little bit because the birds are eating the cherries, but I have a plan for this summer. The garden from 2022 was getting bigger. I was growing more vegetables. I was also getting more fruits. But by then, after 2 years, I found a place where I could actually grow more food, and that's the community garden because they decided that they were opening a community garden, and I could go there, take a whole aisle that was 165 feet, give or take, and plant whatever I wanted there. The only thing I had to do was to promise them that I was going to go and take care of the weeds. And it is hard to do. It's not easy. I spent more time there weeding there than I did home. And even then, like I couldn't keep up. But at least when they start tilling in the fall, it takes out everything and there's not enough weeds left there to make a difference. I'm struggling a little bit more at home, but that's a story for another day. I have a plan for that as well. So basically, after the first 2 years, I started from a little 4 by 6 garden with one apple tree, and without emptying my bank account, I had like a 4 by 8 garden with a greenhouse. I also had another 12 by 16 garden where the little barn was, which I purchased for only $200, by the way. It didn't cost me more than that. You can also find probably like little tiny chicken coops, people getting rid of their smelt shanties or old sheds that they're trying to get rid of. So it can be very cheap. I also had this 9 by 15 feet garden. I had a few rabbits by then, which was giving me free fertilizer for my garden. And I had the community garden and I had my animals over at Sarah's property. It might seem like a lot, but it allowed me to grow about 1,600 pound of food, give or take 1,700. Keep in mind that I'm also hunting and fishing. A lot of the fish and animals I get during my hunting and fishing trips end up in my freezer. It doesn't go to waste. So I had a moose the first year, Sells brought me hunting with him. He had a tag. I ended up with about 100 pound of moose meat. I had a few grouse. I ended up having turkeys, chickens. I ended up being able to go fish because once you start exploring and asking questions around you, you'll see that people sometimes, and more often than not, are willing to bring you along on their little fishing trips. You just pay your part of gas. And for us, the one example we can give, I had this one friend that told me, look, it's gonna cost me about $150 to bring you fishing at sea. We can fish there for a whole day, like from 8 in the morning until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. You should have plenty of fish by then. So there was myself and two of my friends, cost us $50 each. We went for a little trip on a boat, which I would have probably paid just for the trip. I ended up being able to fish and caught my limit of mackerel, which was 20, and I also caught my limit of striped bass, which was 3. So striped bass will be roughly around 5 pounds each. So you have nice fillet of about 3/4 of a pound on each side. Mackerel, I made some fillet, I didn't weigh it out. I don't know how much it was in terms of weight, but I made some fillet, froze it, and it was meat for later on. So all that adds up. And it was just like my third year. I started in 2020. There was 2021, the big mess with the village. 2022, I was back on my feet. If it wasn't for the fact that I had to get rid of all my animals in 2021, I'd be probably a year ahead. But that really stalled me for a year. 2023 arrived. I had a better understanding of how to raise my chickens and turkeys. So I was able to save more money to get more meat at the end and better quality as well. So I ended up having pork, I ended up having turkeys, I ended up having chickens, grouse. I was able to get deer meat, venison. I was also able to get moose meat again. I wasn't lucky enough to be able to go striped bass fishing, but I was lucky enough to go fish at a little local pond, which was still cheaper than what you buy at the store, better quality food. It's not like perfect. It's not like it's all natural, but it's still pretty decent meat. Rainbow trout was awesome. So we had this nice meal last summer with Jack and Lindsay from Ren's Homestead and Mr. Gary from the GBL, the old church homestead. My fruit forest is expanding. I ended up buying a bunch of perennials. When I buy them at the end of season, I get them on sale. I have a pretty decent price on them. Chives, mint, lemon balm, things like that. Things that will come back every year. I ended up buying a bunch of different seeds also that I plan on trying: asparagus, lime balm. I have all kind of different peppers, flowers. I ended up having a nice seed collection. It's kind of crazy when I think about how I started in 2020 with no knowledge. I had failed all those previous years, and in 2020 I decided it was time for me to just go ahead, learn everything I could about homesteading, gardening, farming, and 2023 arrived and I went a step higher. I realized that there were some people in my surroundings that knew about foraging, like wild mushrooms, other wild plants, wild edibles. There's so much wild fruits out there in the woods: blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, rose hips. I used to call them dewberries, but I guess I had the wrong name. But they're kind of like raspberries that grow on the ground. They're a little bit smaller of the ground. Choke cherries, hazelnuts. Those are the ones that are growing in my area. There's probably more. I found some cranberries last year while I was deer hunting. Well, last fall. I learned about Labrador tea. I found a place that's awesome for Labrador tea. I also found some sweet ferns, which is an hypertonic. You put that in a cold drink. I was able to find a place where I could actually get some puffball mushrooms, chanterelles, lobster mushrooms. I also found a place where I could harvest some sumac, the little red plant, red fruity flower kind of plant. It all adds up. It all adds up. And when I look back 4 years ago, I had no idea I was going to get this far. I had no idea that this would be my end game. I had no idea that I was going to grow so much food that the inflation at the grocery store would not impact me. Of course, it cost me a lot more for my gas to go to work. To me, that's insane because it cost me about $75 a week just to go to work. And I work 20 minutes away. It used to cost me about $40. Now it's 150 bi-weekly. It used to be about $80 bi-weekly. So it's almost double. But when it comes to food, we might be in the needs of cutting the home phone, the cable. Maybe we'll have to cut Crave, Netflix, Disney Plus, and all those platforms at some point. But for now, no matter what happens, if shit hit the fan, I have food. If I lose my job tomorrow morning, I don't have $1,000 aside in case of emergency, but I have food. I'd rather have $1,000 worth of food preserved, set aside in case I need it, than just have $1,000 in my bank account, because $1,000 in my bank account is not a profit. It's something that I will use for something else. The food, I can't use it for anything else than food. So anyone out there that wants to start homesteading, that wants to start gardening, the best time would have been 20 years ago. Of course, second best time is now. Start now. Plant a fruit tree. I have cranberries, cherries, honeyberries, gooseberries, white, red, and black currants. I have plums, pears, apples, four different kind of apple trees here. I found a few places where I can find some wild apple trees, which is awesome. I have 5 kids, so everything that I can get for free is a plus. So why not go and use the dandelion and grow on your lawn? Because you can make some wonderful, delicious jelly with dandelion. You can take the leaves, use them in a salad, just like you would with spinach. You can take the roots and make tea/coffee. Doesn't really taste like coffee, but it is a tea or something that could replace coffee if you're more a person that would drink coffee for the feeling of drinking something warm. Now, if you need the caffeine, it's a different story, but it's an alternative. Might not be 100% one-for-one replacement, but it's still pretty decent. Choke cherries, like I said, there's so many wild edibles out there that you can find. If you can just find someone to teach you those things, and hopefully with my channel in the next few months, years, I'll be able to teach you the basics. No matter what I teach you, please, please, please double check your sources every time. What I'll be putting on my channel is mostly for just to let you know that it's a possibility. I've done a video a couple days ago, couple weeks ago, alder catkins, the little nutlets. You can use that as elder peppers, kind of. It's a nice little spice you can put on meat. I use rose hips. I also found spruce needles. Right now, one of the tea that I drink the most is white pine needle with shaga. Hoping that I'll be able to find shaga. I found some in the past. I brought one little piece home, and my girlfriend thought that it was going bad. She threw it out. I have to I have to teach her not to do that anymore. But I guess there was a little white fungus growing on them, so I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. I love you, honey. But you can learn how to preserve. You can learn how to grow your food better. You can learn so many things. Start your seeds indoor. Start your seed at the right time. Harden them off before you put them outside. A lot of people will lose their plants because, oh, well, I started them inside, it took them outside, and they died. Well, of course, because the plant is not used to be outside. You have to harden plant before you can actually put it outside. So I purchased this little, it was on sale at Walmart for about $20, little plastic tote bin with little wheels. I can put my plants in there, drag them out, drag them back inside. It's going to be different this year because I have a cat now. but I hopefully I will have my greenhouse. Hopefully I'll be able to put everything in my greenhouse during the night. If I can do that, then they should survive, but it's gonna be a little experiment that I'm gonna try. Stay tuned for that. Anyone can do it. Anyone can start from scratch and grow a ton of food. 2023, I actually harvested 2,500 pound of food. I think I was at 2,476 before the competition I was in ended. And I harvested a little bit more food after that. I foraged a little bit and I harvested a few chicken eggs. I have some rabbits in my freezer. I have some grouse. I have some turkey, chicken, pork, moose, deer. I have a bunch of zucchini, squash frozen, tomatoes frozen, carrots frozen, tomatoes, carrots, beans, meat, canned, stews, chicken soup. It's stuff that you learn. And if you can just invest $100 a year, it's not much. $10 per month, 30 cents per day, 25 cents per day. 25 cents per day will give you $8, $7, 7.50 a month. At the end of the year, you'll have $100. So you can buy a pressure canner, you can buy mason jars. If you can get mason jars at yard sales for cheap, then you just have to buy the lids. You'll save tons of money. Look around. Maybe some friends are willing to give away cuttings from their apple trees, from their gooseberries, from their honeyberries, from their raspberries. Maybe you can find some strawberries. You don't need much, just like 4 plants in a square, and they'll spread out like crazy. And especially if you're alone, you don't need much to grow food for yourself. Of course, by doing this, we go a little bit more with the seasons. We don't necessarily have fresh strawberries in October. We'll have them in July. But if we only have to buy strawberries, January, February, March, and so on, well, that's half the time we don't have to buy strawberries. If we don't have to buy chicken the whole season, the whole year, imagine the amount of money we save. Yes, it costs money to buy them when they're little chicks. It costs money to buy the feed. I've done a video. I'll put the link up here for that video where I do all the homesteading math. And I know it's never 100% accurate because, if you have to buy the compost, you have to buy the seeds, you have to buy the feed. Maybe you'll lose more than one chicken. Maybe you'll lose 3 or 4 chickens. Maybe you'll end up not being able to harvest them yourself. You might have to pay someone. But in the end, you know where your food is coming from, and you're a little bit closer to be self-sufficient. Self-sufficiency is something that we are all trying to reach. Everybody should be trying to get there. I don't know why people see that as being weird or different. Why would you be dependent on a system? It worked for a long time. I'm not so sure it's working as well anymore. But personally, it's all about growing the nice food, fresh produce from my garden. I know the food that I'm growing, I know where it's coming from. I know that I don't put pesticides on them. I know that I won't put herbicides on them. I know that it is organic. If there's a recall on lettuce, because there seems to be a recall on lettuce every year, I don't have to throw away my lettuce because it's growing in my garden back here. And I know that I didn't put any non-decomposed animal poop around them. You know what I mean? My advice is start small. I have some friends and family that told me, they said, Remy, look, it's not for me. I don't like gardening. I don't like hunting. I don't like doing that stuff. I'd rather save my money, go to Cuba once a year than invest. That's fine. That's what, like, I don't judge. Like, that's what you want to do, do it. But if your goal is to eat better, be healthier, food is where it all starts. I worked in pharmacy for 15 years. So I agree that the pharmaceutical companies are there for a reason. I agree that they have their place. I agree that if you have a heart attack, when it happens fast. You have to call 911, go to the hospital, and get some medication. You don't have time to go search for that plant that might save your life because that's not how it works. Medicinal plants, being healthy, is something that works on the long run. Yes, I drink some chamomile tea because it's helping me relax. It's helping me with my anxiety. It's making me sleep better. But if I was really struggling before I start drinking some tea, maybe I would need to take some Ativan or, lorazepam, clonazepam, those benzos that have a job of fixing your stress level and, working on the chemicals in the brain to make you not as stressed. But once you start drinking the tea, if you start doing it now, maybe it'll prevent that from ever happening. And that's why I say I believe they both have their place. And once again, this is just my opinion. I don't want to start a debate. If you want to talk about it, just please do it in a respectful way. I'm all good for different opinions. I'm happy to hear different opinions. Just stay polite. It's all I'm asking. And then again, I see both. I do both things. Like I'll take some Advil if I really have a bad headache because I don't have any wild plants around me, especially not in the winter, that can actually cure my migraines. It might not bring my fever down. I can do some things to help build my immune system, but it doesn't mean that I will never get sick. It could help. It will get better. I will have some more vitamins. I will have some more potassium, magnesium, and all those nutrients that are really important. But at the end of the day, you have to start now. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to keep your diet like a healthy diet with a lot of different varieties. Your diet needs to be including tons of different kind of food in order for you to have all the nutrients you need, not just one thing. If you only eat chicken, it's not good for you. I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's not good for you. If you want to be healthy, you have to keep a balance in what you eat. Chicken once a week. People talk about red meat not being good for you, but I say if you only eat it like once every second week, there's no harm done. You should eat fish. You should eat vegetables every meal, fruits. But even if you only eat raspberries, it's not necessarily good for you either. You have to eat something else, different kind of food. Eat strawberries today, raspberries tomorrow, blueberries a day after, tomatoes a day after, carrots, potatoes. Just a little bit of everything will make you feel a lot better about your health. When I say start now, start learning about that stuff. Start exploring the nature. Nature has a lot of nice plants out there just for you to harvest. And I've been taught if you forage, 1/3 for you, 1/3 for the animals, and 1/3 so that the forest can regenerate. And once you start learning about that, all that stuff, you'll see that there's so many things out there to help you feel better about your health. It's worth doing. I'm so happy that I started in 2020. I'm so happy that I already had some basics knowledge from way back then. Now, if you want to start, I'm here to tell you that it is possible. Don't try to make it to the end line right away. Don't look at where I am today and tell yourself that this is where you need to be because you will burn out. But you can follow my videos quickly, watch even just the thumbnails, just the stories of what I've done in the first year compared to the second year, compared to the third year. And you'll see that I started from scratch and I built up. Every year I add some extra layers, extra compost, extra plants, extra fruit trees, extra knowledge, extra foraging, extra everything. I made some new friends that were able to teach me different recipes. Some were able to teach me how to can, some helped me raise chickens, some were able to teach me how to raise rabbits. The community is so important. It's impossible to be 100% self-sufficient. You need the community around you. But the goal is to make it as close as possible every year. And it's kind of like the little Timu game when you start. The first year you'll probably make like 50%. The second year you'll make it to 60, and then to 65, and then to 68, and then to 69, and then to 70, and then 70.1, 70, and so on. Like the first few years, you seem to be going faster, but the more you advance, the more you realize that the finish line is just getting further and further away from you. But it's good because it's keeping you going, and don't get discouraged. If you look behind you in the past, what you've done, if I look at what I've done in the last 4 years, it's amazing. A lot of people look at me now and they're like, man, you're awesome. Not to brag, but I was able to grow 2,500 pounds of food for my family. It used to be $800 biweekly of grocery. That was before the inflation. And now it probably cost us about $400 biweekly. We have, a pantry, we have frozen vegetables, we have 4 freezers. When we started, we only had 1 and it was pretty much always empty. I had to go to my mom's place to get some food because otherwise the kids would not be able to eat properly. And I'm at the point now where I cannot help my friends financially, but I always tell them, if you're hungry and if you have to decide between paying your bill and eating a decent meal, just come over. Pay your bill, come over. I'll gladly cook you a nice meal. I'll give you one of the mason jar I have back there, and you can have a nice moose too. I'll give you some carrots. I'll give you a moose steak. I don't want anyone to starve. And I think that right now, a lot of people are freaking out because they were not ready. They were not ready for what's going on right now. Nobody was. But the homesteaders, they were a little bit more prepared. And right now, the cost of food is not scaring me at all. It's all the rest around it, to be honest. But if you start now, maybe first year you'll only be able to grow 100-pound vegetables. But hey, if you can do that year number 1, imagine what you're going to do year number 2, year number 3, because you're going to fail at a few things. You're going to learn from that. You're going to expand. You're going to grow. You're going to grow more and better. You'll know more about what you're growing, so you'll be able to add some more tips and tricks. You'll just get better. You'll just improve over time. You'll make it at a point where you will be so proud of yourself. And that's what I'm going to leave you with here today. Just don't give up. And please, if you are on the borderline of starting, just do it. You don't need to sacrifice anything. Make a garden, just put cardboards, compost. Like I said in one of my previous videos, it's going to cost you $30. It's $2 for a pack of seed. This one here was $2.49. And my gardener has some pack of seeds for $2. Mackenzie has some for $1.99. And if seeds is really your only issue, come see me. I can probably squeeze a few in a bag and help you out to start. And that's another thing. I didn't even start saving my own seeds yet. So when I started, well, not true. I have a few ones here. Those are spaghetti king squash seeds. So it was an hybrid of spaghetti squash and king pumpkins, I think. And whoever was able to merge them together make a new type of squash. I also have a few early prolific yellow squash seeds here. Those are gonna go in the ground in the spring. Every year you learn something new. And for me this year, I really want to learn how to save all my seeds. I really want to learn how to grow more food more efficiently, remove the weeds, do things better to look better. I also intend on investing on a lot of perennials. I planted some chives, mint, other kind of perennials like that, and they're exploding. Right now, it's not all over the place, but I have so many that I can just go outside, grab something, make a tea, make some spice, use it to go in a salad or anything like that. So it's kind of cool to have that option as well. So just start now, learn every year, improve, build on, repeat. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.